Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. As I was mentioning, you can see the TV clips of the week at tarpley.net. That includes two interviews, one directly with Moscow, one in the studio here in Washington, D.C. from midweek. Those are there. There will be an Arabic one. We're hoping to start an Arabic page on tarpley.net if that clip becomes available. And also last Sunday night I was on Press TV of Tehran, Iran, with a line which is quite different from that of the Iranian government. Very interesting contrast there, but we'll talk about that maybe another time. Right now, we had Admiral Stavridis, the commander of NATO, the SACEUR, testifying to the Senate Armed Services Committee, saying we have flickers of the presence of al-Qaeda, flickers. And Hillary Clinton said, we have no 100% insight into who the rebels are. Well, these two officials should be immediately fired or immediately resign. In shame, they should probably find a way to check into a hospital like the Japanese guy from the Tokyo Electric Company has just done, out of shame for their incompetence and the humiliation they visited on themselves and their families. Admiral, those are not flickers of al-Qaeda. They are a bonfire. They're a forest fire. They're a floodlight, a Klieg light. They're a supernova of al-Qaeda, and the epicenter of the supernova is right between Benghazi and Tobruk. It's in the city of Darna, the terrorist capital of the world, based on a U.S. government study. But not even, you have to look, you can look at your West Point study, that is to say from the Combating Terrorism Center of the Department of Social Sciences, U.S. Military Academy, West Point, New York, on the Hudson, in December of 2007. We'll get into that study in just a second. We've talked about it before. But now, last Saturday, we had the following. You pick up the London Daily Telegraph last Saturday morning, and they give you the basic facts in perfectly good English of what's going on with these terrorists. And it's an article that is based on the original investigative reporting of an Italian newspaper, Il Sole 24 Ore, and it's written Il Sole 24 Ore. It means the sun 24 hours. It's the main Italian business newspaper. It's kind of like the Wall Street Journal of the Milan stock market and the northern Italian industrial complex. So what did they do? Il Sole 24 Ore sent a reporter to Darna to interview the commander of that city, the top rebel honcho in one of the key towns of the rebellion. And they picked him because he had been denounced by the Libyan foreign ministry as a former inmate of the Guantanamo Bay concentration camp who had set himself up as the emir of Darna and was now carrying out mass executions. Yes. And those mass executions would, of course, have included black people. If you had workers from Chad, workers from Mali, from Somalia, from Eritrea, from any of the other countries of black Africa, they had a very good chance of being massacred. Quite a number of them were lynched in public, hanging on lampposts in the worst racist excesses that we've seen in a very long time. So the Italians sent a reporter to find out whether this was true. And they met with a guy called Hasidi, Hasidi, interviewed by Il Sole 24 Ore, and the same thing then available in the Daily Telegraph of London, one of the main broadsheet newspapers, tremendous NATO intelligence links. So the interview with Hasidi, and Hasidi says, yes, I have been a member of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group. Now, that, of course, merged with al-Qaeda in 2007, 2008. And he says, yes, I was actively recruiting jihadis, mujahideen, fighters, suicide bombers to go and fight the U.S. in Afghanistan and Iraq. I wonder how many he killed. And he says, I myself was captured, says Hasidi, the rebel commander of Darna between Benghazi and Tobruk. Hasidi says, I myself was captured near Peshawar. I was held as a prisoner of war by the United States in Pakistan, and then I was sent back to Libya with a job Was it deliberate? I think it might have been. Given the Yemen example, looks like it was. Now, the Libyan government says that Hasidi was not just held by the U.S. in Pakistan, but he was considered a hardcore, incorrigible terrorist killer who was sent to Guantanamo Bay and then very likely sent back with a job to do, the job to contribute to the overthrow of Gaddafi and to set up this monstrous tyranny of al-Qaeda and the terrorists in the Benghazi to Tobruk area. I'm wondering what the status of women in these areas is going to look like. I wonder if Hillary Clinton and Susan Rice have given a thought to that. But anyway, this is Hasidi. So that entire story goes from the Italian main business newspaper to the perfectly readable English of the London Daily Telegraph this Saturday. So I would say to Admiral Stavridis, you are an incompetent 2 times over, at least. First is, if you want to know who's leading the rebellion, look in the annals of your own prisoner of war records. Find out who you held, terrorists captured on the battlefield, held by you, be it in a black site, a concentration camp in Pakistan, or in the main Guantanamo Bay concentration camp. The other one is, Admiral, you're operating in Europe. Pick up the bloody London Daily Telegraph and read all about it. So all this stuff we've heard, right, people telling us, we don't know really who's in the rebel council. Now, it's true up to a point. Half or more than half of the 31 members of the Benghazi rebel council are complete mysteries. No names have been put out. The cover story is, these are wonderful democracy fighters and champions of human rights and the rule of law. They're afraid that if Gaddafi finds out their identities, they will be taken away by the secret police. No, I say, because they're members of al-Qaeda. They're known international terrorists. They probably have Interpol warrants. They have criminal records. They have all sorts of interesting stories in their past. Now, it's interesting. Instead of focusing on the obvious terrorist connections of the Libyan rebels, we are hearing again and again this story about Lockerbie in Scotland. This is complete baloney. And a lot of the people who are opportunistically putting this story out right now know better. The story seems to go like this. It was always known that the main people doing the Lockerbie, Scotland bombing of the Pan Am plane in the late 80s were from Syria. There was a ring of drug dealers in Syria. The name that you find most often on the Internet accounts, of course, is Monzer el-Qassar, that he was somehow the kingpin of this operation. Well, anyways, from Syria. And why? Well, one of the stories about that is that there was a Defense Intelligence Agency investigative team on that flight who had been looking into CIA, that is to say, Central Intelligence Agency drug smuggling in the Bekaa Valley, and they had to be eliminated. So it was the CIA who blew up the plane with the help of Syria, and the stuff with Gaddafi was a complete frame-up. And we will be back on World Crisis Radio.